Well, good morning or good afternoon, depending on where you're at. Thank you so much for joining us for today's webinar, A Data Year in Review, Data Strategies, Data Warehouses, and Modernization Strategies. I am Ashley Howell, and I'm pleased to be today's facilitator on today's webcast. Before I introduce you to today's speakers and we get into the bulk of our Q&A here and learnings from our fabulous speakers, just want to run you through a few logistics. Today's webcast is going to be recorded, and we will make the presentation available for you tomorrow along with the slide. At any time during the presentation, we really do encourage you to pop your questions in. Your lines are muted, but again, at any point during the presentation, please pop your questions into that chat window. We have allocated time at the end of today's presentation to ensure we cover your questions. So today's webinar is going to go something like this. I'm going to introduce you to today's presenters. We're going to start by kind of looking back here as we come to the conclusion of 2023, what trends really emerged, what did some of these leaders in data see this past year, and then we'll move forward into looking at 2024. What do we have to look forward to? Where do we think the industry is going? And as I mentioned, we'll end with Q&A. So without further ado, I'm thrilled to introduce you to today's speakers. We're so excited to have them on today's broadcast with us. Today we've got Veronika Durgin. She's the Vice President of Data. Veronika, thanks for being here. I'm just going to let you introduce yourself to today's attendees.
All right, I pushed all the right buttons. Hello, everybody. Can you see me okay, Ashley?
Yes, we can hear you too.
Fantastic. Well, hello, everybody. Very nice. Thank you for joining us today. So Veronika Durgin, I've been in data for a long time. It's actually getting to a point where I don't say how many years it's been, because then people start guessing how old I am, and we don't like that. But it's been a while, kind of like a very long, hot minute. My entire career I actually spent in data. I kind of fell into it right after getting an undergrad in biology out of various degrees. A big chunk of my career, I was a DBA, kind of focusing on fine-tuning optimization. So I certainly appreciate a well-designed, a well-functioning database, probably a lot more than many of the current database professionals. So moved around various different roles. I was in kind of like principal technical roles. I was in management roles. And right now I'm overseeing data at Saks.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Veronika, for being here. We also have Paul Hooper. He's the Chief Information Architect. Paul, can you share a few words about your background with today's audience?
Yeah, so Ashley, thanks for having me here. Like she said, I'm Paul Hooper, Chief Enterprise Information Architect at Emerson's Test and Measurement Group, which a couple months ago was National Instruments. There was an acquisition a couple months ago that finally closed. So we've got an integration adventure ahead of us over the next couple of years. I've considered data and analytics to be my career focus for 25 years. I'm not scared to tell you guys how long it's been for me, but it's been a while. But it's been my career focus for 25 years and my passion as well. And I didn't expect that, right? I got an electrical engineering degree. I got my first job in semiconductor manufacturing as a test engineer, and just really quickly fell in love with data and analytics when I saw the business impact that could be made through that, right? Test and measurement of semiconductors produces a ton of data. And when you can actually understand that data and what it's telling you and make decisions based on that, you can have a tremendous business impact. And so fell in love with data and analytics back then, and I've been in that ever since. I've done data modeling, data engineering, data science, architecture. I've worn a lot of different hats over those years.
Awesome. Thanks, Paul. And last but not least, we have our very own Mike Kaluzik. He's the Chief Operating Officer here at Infovia. Mike's going to serve as moderator today, asking some wonderful questions to really get insights from Veronika and Paul. Mike, would you mind sharing a few words with the audience about your background?
Sure, yeah, great to be here today, and thank you all for attending our webinar, and hopefully it's going to have a lot of value for you as well. I've probably been in IT longer than Paul, if we're keeping track of who's been here longest, but the exciting thing is I started out my career as a software engineer, and I've over the last couple of decades have really spanned all of IT and business operations. with a lot of larger organizations like Fidelity, Fiserv, and United Health, leading global organizations there. And now I've had the privilege of leading Infovia as well. Just a brief bit about Infovia. We are a data strategy and execution company, so we help our clients put together a solid data strategy. We take a holistic approach to that, looking at not just your data warehouse, but your analytics piece, your governance piece, access control, and then make sure that it's all well formed so that if you decide to go and explore data science or AI, everything's going to be well architected so that those things can be incorporated as well. We're big proponents of Data Vault as a methodology for building a data warehouse. We've seen tremendous value from it, and we continue to advocate for it with our clients, although some people choose to go that route and others choose to go more traditional routes as well. And then really our focus on our approach is really to emphasize excellence and thought leadership in what we do. We really strive to generate business value early on in our processes so that we can both validate the strategy that's been selected as well as generate ideation for follow-on strategies after that. So with that, let's start by taking a look at 2023. And I'm going to start with maybe a more exciting topic. And so, Paul and Veronika, my first question is, what do you see as some of the most exciting innovations that you've heard about, read about, or participated in this past year? And I'll let either one of you jump in first.
I'll jump in with the obvious one. ChatGPT, generative AI, just in general, everyone is excited about that, which kind of surprises me because before 2023, no one was excited to talk to a chatbot, right? But in 2023, everyone's really excited to talk about a chatbot, and I really believe that it has significant value as an accelerator. I'm a little bit skeptical of the responses that it gives at times. I've witnessed a few very obvious mistakes. I was at a presentation last month, where someone was presenting slides, and all of the images in the slides were generated by generative AI. And he put one up, and it showed a person at a screen, doing business intelligence type work, and it was really obvious that she was looking at a graph of something on the screen, a chart, like an Excel chart or something. Except the image on the screen was being projected from the back of the screen instead of the front of the screen, right? So it was very obviously not representative of reality. But at first glance, it looked right. But then you looked at it a little more and you're like, wait, monitors don't work that way. And so I think that, generative AI produces the statistically likely answer, not necessarily the right answer. And so I'm a little bit skeptical of the responses and a little bit skeptical of the value, right? I think that generative AI is most easily trained to do things that are in high supply. And if you've studied economics, you know that things that are in high supply are not necessarily the highest value, right? So I'm a little bit skeptical of it, but man, that was certainly a big thing that got hyped in 2023.
Yeah, I think that's an obvious one there. Veronika, what have you seen this past year?
Yeah, I agree. I was gonna let Paul go first because I don't want to go first, but then he kind of said the thing that I wanted to say.
Yeah.
I agree. LLMs, I think really mind-boggling, very exciting, something completely different and new. So everybody kind of tons of hype. And I just wanted to say the fireplaces could be see-through. So maybe not monitors, but fireplaces where you can see, right? I also found it very fascinating that every tool is now an AI tool, and which is okay. But I think I agree. LLMs are exciting, Gen AI super exciting, but it also kind of brings the focus back to the quality of data, which is, I think, Paul, what you kind of
Yes.
a little bit alluded to, and I know we have a whole hour probably discuss this back and forth. If there is no good data, like don't believe everything you read on the internet, your Gen AI will gen something for you that you might not actually want to use. But definitely as far as tech innovation is very exciting.
Hmm. Yeah, I think we've seen the same thing as we've looked at AI. We found ways to sort of hyper automate some of our processes using generative AI. And yet at the same time, we also understand that there are errors that are in there. Just because it's artificial intelligence doesn't mean it's right, and doesn't mean it's unbiased. And so we've had to make sure we factor those things in. And I think as we look at a lot of organizations incorporating AI, I think they're starting to realize the same thing, that AI is not perfect, but I think it's definitely evolving and maturing very, very rapidly. So great. Well, let's flip it around. What are some shiny things that you've seen this last year that are sort of surprisingly falling flat or losing their luster? And Veronika, we'll start with you on this one.
Oh my gosh. I'll set Paul up, I think, for I don't want to rant, but so data mesh, I don't know if it was like really last year, but the year before, hot topic, kind of implementation details, I think, kind of fell a little flat. Um, Data contracts for me are kind of on a very similar trajectory. Hot topic, a lot of great theoretical discussions, but the actual implementation details are not quite there yet to make it succeed. Yeah, so those two were kind of in my mind for lots of talks, but not much action.
Yeah, Paul, what's your thoughts there?
Yeah, that's actually exactly what I was going to talk about, data mesh. Gartner marked it last year obsolete on their hype cycle just months after the book was finally published. And I think they also produced a statistic that said, or a prediction, I should say, that said that 80% of data mesh early adopters will fail to meet their SLAs in 2025. And I think that's accurate. I think a lot of people don't understand the implementation details. And data mesh is not an architecture; it's a socio-technical paradigm, right? So it's not something you can necessarily build. Now that said, even though I think data mesh is kind of falling flat a little bit, the 4 principles of data mesh, I believe, have a ton of value. Domain orientation, data as a product, even though I believe that data are assets, not products. I think that having an entrepreneurial approach to data, where you're intentionally taking responsibility for producing software that curates data in an automated way and does that intelligently, so you have a high quality data asset that comes out the other end that people can use and bring business value. I think that is solid, right? Federated computational governance, which is a mouthful, but really not doing centralized, not doing decentralized, but doing a hybrid of those two things, where it's federated, where you've got a central body that's enabling decentralized bodies. I think that's really solid. And then, of course, a self-serve data platform. The 4th principle is a solid principle as well. Just because you have federated development doesn't mean you have federated deployment, right? You've got everything deploying to a central repository, or at least something that is viewed as a central repository that's easily accessible. You don't have data silos everywhere. Data teams that are developing things feel enabled. I think that's really solid. So the data mesh principles, I feel are really solid, but the actual architecture of a data mesh and the implementation detail of a data mesh is a little bit fuzzy.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. No, absolutely. So with that in mind, as we talk about data mesh, and a lot of times that incorporates different technologies, obviously, what are you seeing as sort of the trending platforms or methodologies or even tools over this past year? Are you seeing a gravitational pull in one direction or another?
Yeah, so this kind of gets into our looking forward in 2024. But at the Data Vault conference this year, Cindy Meyerson presented on data mesh, and one of the things that she said in that presentation was that if you build a data vault right, you have fully embodied the principles of data mesh, and I really believe that. And that's as I look forward to building data meshes in the future. Data Vault is absolutely the way I'm going to prefer going to build that out. And part of the reason why is because if you take an agile approach to building something, the data mesh, the data vault methodologies actually work. And so that's why I think data vault is really key to a successful data mesh implementation.
Okay. Veronika, how about you? Are you seeing any sort of gravitational pull towards any particular platform or methodology or tools?
I think it's, I'm going to quote Joe Reese here, but it's like mixed martial arts of data. I think this kind of like consistently repeating within data community, we're all lean on this perfect, pure, whatever implementation of whatever. I think the reality is that we need to do mix and match of what actually works for the org, depending on their maturity, their journey towards being data-driven, data-informed, whatnot, their skill sets, their data literacy. So that's what I think is going to happen. That's why like data mesh in theory is amazing. Data products are in theory are amazing. Data vault in theory is incredible, but when you actually get down to the implementation details is when you have to be truly flexible and be smart and use the right tool, the right pattern for the right problem.
Yeah, I'll just reiterate that as well. We've seen a lot of people do data vault right, and we've seen a lot of people do data vault wrong just because they didn't take the time to understand the right way to do it. They didn't get the training and the certification that they needed, or they didn't pull in a good partner that can help them get it right from the start. And so absolutely, and I think that's true with any technology or methodology that you're adopting, is you're going to find that the people that try to figure it out as they go are going to have some regrets down the road. They're going to have to go back and re-architect. Whereas those that pull in a partner that's going to help them get it right the first time, it's usually going to have a profound impact on the success of that project. Let's talk a little bit about just what we've seen in terms of strategies as they were laid out at the beginning of the year. Would you say that overall, with the people that you talk to within your own organizations or outside of your organizations, that Veronika, I know you speak pretty prolifically at different events, are you seeing that most people were able to achieve their goals for this past year, or were there certain things that hindered their ability to achieve those goals?
That's a loaded question. I think hypes certainly derail us. And I think, LLM, everything AI, we must bring AI kind of rattled a lot of teams, I think. And this isn't just like specifically not to be on Gen AI or whatever. We tend to do that. Oh, new hot tool, we must. No, we don't. Let's pause for a second, see where it actually fits. So this is pretty, I think, like traditional, typical. I think the other thing that not necessarily derailed, but just the economic conditions of the past year made a lot of teams refocus on what they're delivering, why they're delivering it, and how much it costs. So I know we're all aware there were a ton of layoffs. I see this constant like, data team doesn't deliver value. I'm like, that is not true. They might not be focusing on the most important things. They might not be, maybe the timelines, maybe the agility is where you have to focus on. So I think kind of it was in a way like almost like opposing ends of like Gen AI is going to solve world hunger versus like we actually need to be pragmatic and fast and deliver good and cheap at the same time. So at least that's kind of, and again, like, are you satisfied with what you've done in the past year? I never am. And, you can ask my team. I know 20 other things we have to do. I never pause to look back to see what we've actually accomplished. So it's like, it's a journey. It's not a quick, we're done, walk away.
Yeah, just to add on to that, Veronika, the executive leadership, they always know the cost of something, right, to the penny, because they get the bill, right, for it, and they have to pay the bill to the vendor, but they often don't see the value of things, and I think, and this is skipping a little bit ahead to looking forward to 2024, but data culture, I think, and just really doing things, understanding the value of what you do, before you start to actually implement is a really critical thing we need to embed into our data culture is really understand the value better, because it's really easy to understand the cost. When you get the bill in the mail, it's not as easy to understand the value that you get from it. And so we need to put more focus into that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. So in looking back over this last year, this will be the final question as we look back to 2023. Is there anything significant that you would have done differently knowing what you know today? And Paul, we'll start with you on that one.
Oh my goodness. So real and Veronika, this is kind of again harking back to something that you said. We have that shiny new thing problem, right? We think the SNT is gonna fix it, or the shiny new technology, shiny new thing, whatever you want to call it. Technology is rarely the only part of the solution, or even the most important part of the solution. You've got to think about people and processes as well, right? It's not just, you can't just bring Snowflake in and it's going to fix everything. You actually have to change your processes and build things intelligently, because if you just shift from one technology platform to another, and you keep all your same people and all your same processes, you don't train your people, you don't do anything differently, you just change the technology. There are a lot of problems you're not going to solve. And so that's kind of looking back on 2023 personally for me. I see that in my own environment, but I also have heard that in other people's environment, that a focus on technology and technology alone isn't going to solve the problem. Yeah.
Yeah, I agree with that. I was just chatting with a friend too. Technology is never the problem. Like honestly, there isn't a technological issue that we can't solve. Sometimes we have to be a little more creative, sometimes a little bit more painful, but technological issues are easily solvable. And then again, like bringing new tech in, are you bringing the right new tech in is another question. But people, it's always about people, our capabilities, motivations. I think that's the fine balance of kind of like how do we, encourage people to be creative. I think, Mike, but to answer your question, I think for me, what I need to be better at and learn to get better at is the balance of delivering for capability versus optimization. It's like if you move fast and you deliver capability, it's usually very expensive. So then you kind of swing the other way, then you only focus on optimization and you potentially slow down delivering capabilities. So how do you find that balance where you kind of like have the right pace for the team to deliver value to the business, but at the same time being, cost efficient, fast, because, things that run slow are expensive, but also deliver value slower, right? So that's kind of looking back is something that a muscle that I still need to build, and I don't know if I'll ever be at the point where I'm happy with it, but that's kind of for me.
Yeah, no, and I think we've seen the same thing with our clients as well. Those that chose to execute and they wanted to bite off the hardest, biggest things first, they found themselves in some political debates within their organizations trying to justify the decisions that they had made. Whereas those that chose to go after quick wins and identify those things that deliver value quickly, they were the ones that were getting success and getting further tailwinds to help them with their projects and their vision to add more to it over time. So yeah, definitely there has to be an emphasis on delivering value quickly and then finding ways to do that with the right technologies and the right methodologies and so forth. Well, that's a great segue into, let's talk now about what we see going forward. And the first question I want to ask is, are you seeing a change in the emphasis on the value of data within your organizations and with people that you're talking to in other industries and organizations compared to how data has been viewed in the past?
Oh, I can go first. I actually had one of the, so 100%, absolutely. Not only using data internally, but also monetizing it. It's like it's a mind shift of like how, where, when it's applicable, kind of like across various businesses and industries. And my favorite thing, not that long ago, a CEO of a company I worked for said that data is software exhaust. I don't think that's the case anymore. I think there's still companies, teams that are lagging to realize that data is not an exhaust. And actually, it's kind of like also like such a bad thing to say. Like it's like gives you like this like cringy feeling. So I certainly see data becoming important. We still have hard time, Paul, to what you mentioned before, figuring out the value. It's super hard to tie actual business value to data products. Now I'm like introducing all these new buzzwords we're delivering, but we are certainly getting there. I think everybody collectively recognizes that.
Yeah. Paul, how about you?
Yeah, I agree. Cost control and expense reduction is always something that's going to be a hot topic in just IT in general. But I think as we worry about the economy contracting and orders coming in light, that sort of thing, I think that obviously we look at cutting costs, and you've seen a lot of layoffs in the news lately, that sort of thing as well. But I think something that is always going to have value is data culture. And I've heard that term thrown around a couple times recently, data culture. And I really like that term because you've got the old, it's often credited to Peter Drucker, I believe, but culture eats strategy for breakfast. We talk about data strategy a lot. Data culture eats data strategy for breakfast. Data strategy is good, but data culture is even better. And when I talk about a data culture, what I mean there is that one of the phrases we've been using internally, and I credit my colleague Miriam for this, is she'll say every project is a data project, right? Data is not a byproduct. It's not an afterthought. It's not a waste exhaust, like you said, Veronika. It's a first-class citizen, right? It's something that you need to consider first up front at the beginning of a project. And I think a lot of times we fail because we think of data at the end of the project, right? We focus on this new feature that we're building or this new thing, and then we get to the end of the project and we're like, well, how do we see the data from that? Oh, I hadn't considered that. I guess we need to talk to the data team about that. And that's a recipe for failure. You've got to think that every project is a data project. And I'll say that the problem with saying that phrase is that not everyone cares about data, right? When you say the word data, the people who are on this call, Veronika, obviously, Mike, obviously, me, obviously, we have a passion for data. We care about data, but not everyone cares about data. Like my wife is a musician, and that kind of keeps me grounded a bit, right? She reminds me very often of the truth that not everyone cares about data, but everyone makes decisions, right? And everyone struggles with decisions. I mean, even if it's where to go for lunch today, right? You struggle with the decision. You absolutely struggle with really important, high value business decisions. And if you can make decisions easier with data, that's a big win. But you also make better decisions with data, right? When you have facts that support your decisions, they're just genuinely better decisions. But then also, if you've ever heard the story of the 3 frogs on a log, have you guys heard this story? 3 frogs sat on a log. One decided to jump off. How many frogs sat on the log? 3 frogs sat on a log. One decided to jump off. How many frogs sat on a log? 3 frogs sat. Until you take action on a decision, it doesn't actually do anything for you. And if you've got a decision that you based on data, your team is going to be more confidently taking action to your decision than they would otherwise, right? So better data equals better decisions equals better action equals better outcomes, right? And so data, not everyone is passionate about data. Not everyone cares about data, but everyone cares about making good business decisions.
I would actually take this a step further. Sorry, Mike, before I forget what I was going to say. I don't like data driven.
Yeah, me too.
Actually, I hate
the same way. I hate the phrase.
Assuming that data tells you everything and you don't have to think. I like data informed. So you actually need to help whoever's using data. I actually, like your wife is amazing. My whole household is like data oriented. My kids know what Snowflake is. So like we don't have this conversation, but like I need our whoever's using data to still use their experience, use their, I don't know, sixth sense, I don't care, to validate data, to question, to be skeptical.
Yes.
So it's not just like, oh, cool, here's something, just believe it. No,
Right.
this is like that next step of culture. No, data is not going to replace you. Still very much need you. We need your decision. We need you to question. We need you to be skeptical.
But I would say that some of the highest business value I've ever gotten out of data is when you hit that moment where the data tells you something that you didn't expect, or completely opposite of what you know to be true. That often provides some sort of like genuine insight into, oh, that's what we're getting wrong.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
oh yeah, I couldn't agree more.
Or just pushes creativity. You're like, all right, cool, maybe it supports what I know, maybe it doesn't, but then it makes you
Mhm.
think. It challenges you in a way. So it's not like, here's a report, just act on it. Like, it's not just your bank account balance, basically.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, and yeah, I'll just emphasize what you guys have said as well. Data has tremendous value. And even though I started out my career as a software engineer and I was writing a lot of cool applications that did really cool things in cool ways, at the end of the day, it was really a mechanism for operating on data. And data is
Mhm.
information. Data is actionable intelligence. And if to use your phrase, Veronika, data being the exhaust of software, that's really a misnomer, because data is the whole purpose for software. If you aren't doing something with the software to create efficiency or operational excellence or operational intelligence, then it kind of defeats the point of having the software in the first place. So as we work with our clients, they're doing things with IoT devices, they're doing things with insights into property management. They're working with their external clients and want to provide feedback to their external clients about how well their businesses are running, or their engagements with their clients, depending on what the industry is. And again, that only happens because we have well-structured data and we have good analytics around that data, so that at the end of the day, we can make better decisions, we can grow more revenue, we can become more operationally efficient, and so on and so forth. We could beat this drum all day long about the value of data, and how the more we invest in our data, the more we're going to reap rewards from it as well. So
And I would
really
add to
appreciate.
that, it's not
Yeah.
even like about operational, like defensive, offensive data strategies, right? Like, it's not to save money. It's not to be more efficient. It's actually new opportunities, new value streams, new
Yeah.
streams of revenue. So it's like we haven't really figured it out. We kind of did how to be more efficient, how to like the bottom line, or like, all right, maybe we'll cut costs here, cut costs there, optimize. That's not fun anymore. I don't know, like, about you, Mike and Paul. To me, the fun is like that aha moment.
Yeah.
Oh,
Mhm.
we can
Mhm.
use this data in this new way that'll actually propel our company into a different, exciting, valuable direction. So
Yes.
it's like always that, like, that's where like this data culture, data literacy comes in, at least for me, the exciting part of it.
That's the exciting part to me too, is that's the fun part, is growing revenue, right?
Mhm.
Is actually meeting the needs of your customers better. And if you meet the needs of your customers better, they're going to pay you more, right? And that increases your revenue. So I heard a neat quote, and I have really no idea where this quote comes from. This might be a completely made up statistic, but I did hear that recently that, and I can't even remember who said it, but it was a survey that basically indicated that companies that indicate that they have a strong data culture actually grow revenue 20% faster than their peers, which I think is fascinating, right? Is we often think of how do we reduce cost with data, but man, I think there's a tremendous opportunity to grow revenue with data as well,
Mhm.
which is much more fun.
Yeah. No, absolutely. Well, let me try to transition from that one and talk a little bit about automation. I know for us, we've seen a tremendous influx in the amount of automation. I know when I
Yeah.
went to conferences earlier this year, the number of vendors out there that had automation, fill in the blank, automated analytics, automated data science, automated, you name it. We're seeing it very prolific across the whole industry. What are
Yeah.
you guys seeing in terms of leveraging automation and how it's driving value and sort of changing the landscape of how we manage data?
Oh, you
Go
want to
for it,
go
Ron.
first? Like, I'm like,
Yeah.
like I could go first. I don't want to, but let Paul chime in first.
Okay.
I can probably talk for 30 minutes about this. So one of the things that I've heard recently a lot, like on LinkedIn and that sort of thing, is people saying that data modeling is dead, or people have lost the ability to do data modeling, or data modeling is not important, right? I think that data modeling, if you don't have automation, so you have your data modeler, and he draws a picture of a data model, and it's just this beautiful, pristine data model. And then a person goes and writes SQL code to implement that model. But then that person, sees some changes they want to make, and they make some changes there, and then maybe they correct some mistakes that the data modeler made. And then over time, multiple developers get their hand on that SQL code, and it completely deviates from the model. And then all of a sudden you have this really pretty picture, but it does not correspond to the reality of what's actually deployed to the system and implemented. And at that point, the degree to which the design that was originally in the model, the degree to which that deviates from what's implemented in reality, um, it decreases, it erodes the value of that model. And eventually you get to a point where the value of that model actually becomes zero. You would be better to reverse engineer the model from what's actually implemented than you would be to try to use that model for anything productive. And so the value of that goes to zero. Well, people don't like doing work that when their work product has zero value. Right. People don't like doing that kind of work. And so I think we've gotten away from data modeling over time, because we've seen the value of those data models go to zero because they don't reflect the implemented reality. But you completely flip that if you have an automation tool, right? If you design a data model, and then the implementation of that model is automated through a tool, all the SQL is code gen from the model itself, then your model actually reflects your implemented reality. And I mean, you get a ton of other benefits from it too. You've got an agile, a faster development pace. The interface to that, you can collaborate with business partners more effectively with that. So I think that automation really makes data modeling so much more valuable, and it takes away just the tedious, typing of SQL away, which is a good thing, right? Because no one likes just tedious typing of SQL. But so automation, I think, is incredibly important. But like I said, I could talk about this for a long time. You can't do automation unless you have design patterns, right? If you just automate the creation of something that doesn't have a pattern, well, what exactly are you automating, right? There's no success there. And so so you have to have really solid design patterns that you're automating the generation of the implementation of. And that's one of the reasons why I really like the data vault architecture and the data vault modeling standards, is because you can actually automate that. And yeah, I could go on for a long time about that, but Veronika, you should chime in.
Like that's such a, yeah, we could probably, like, how long is this webinar?
Yeah.
Automation. Make robots do boring stuff.
Yes.
Like that's really like automated pipelines, repeatable. Anytime you have to copy paste anything, that's like standard pattern. Why like we have more creative things to do. Automating data models, however, to me, a data model, so there's a perfect state where you first design it, but then like there's art to it. And
Yes.
a business is not a business is not a business, even if they're within the same industry. And a data architect is not a data architect is not a data architect. So there is certainly automation, and Data Vault is a great example of there are certain patterns and certain things, but still, by the way, I mean, talking about data modeling is that like we kill things. They're super shiny one year and then we kill them the next. So like I'm gonna ignore that. But there is, in certain areas of data, in my mind, there is some level of art, if you will, uh, where it's not just automatic engineering, automate, walk away, where a human actually needs to think about it, understand the context, understand even just the team that you have, their skill sets, the company, how company's budget is, right? Like it, that's where we still need very much humans, where we should focus in.
Yeah, one thing we
It
often
is
say
an
is
art.
let the machines do what they do best, so that people can do what they do best.
But
That's
And
we're
right.
also
machines are,
lazy, so we don't want to. That's why we're like, we'll
well,
bring.
and if it's pattern based, and if it's something that can be automated, it makes sense to automate it so you can
Yeah.
focus on the art aspect of what we do. Because it's not all just science. There's a lot of art in what we do as data architects and so forth. And I think it's important for us to leverage those tools that are good at automating the simple stuff, so that we can really focus our efforts on generating excellence through artistic implementations. So absolutely. Well, I want to touch on sort of the elephant that's been in the room for everybody this year, which is the economy. And I know it's had a tremendous impact on budgets. It's had an impact on visions and priorities. What are you guys seeing in terms of how the economic landscape has affected your visions, and what has it done to your priorities in terms of what are you sensing from a theme perspective is more important this coming year, and what is going to become less important? So, Veronika, you want to start?
Yeah, so I was actually delighted that we, as in kind of like broad data teams, started to put focus on optimization, performance optimization, therefore cost optimization. Again, I was a DBA for a long time. This is like, I'm like, oh my God, finally. But there is, outside of company spending a lot of money and basically diminishing returns, what value are we delivering, how fast are we delivering, and how much are we paying for that whole thing? There's also environmental implications. Bigger server running longer requires more resources. We are very much limited by what Earth has to offer. So I'm also delighted to see that we're all focusing on optimization, right? Faster, less stuff. Don't run stuff you don't need. Make it run faster. Don't copy the same data from place to place so we have 50 billion copies. There are security and compliance implications. So kind of like for me, the economy in that sense, like kind of downturn is a good thing. So we kind of now forced to focus on all of those things. But of course, layoffs weren't fun for anybody.
Sure. Yeah. Paul?
I tend to intentionally avoid macroeconomic predictions. I think that if you predict the economy is going to go up, 2 out of 3 years you're going to be right. Outside of that, my crystal ball has been broken for a long time, and so I tend not to look at it at all. Veronika, what you said about just optimizing and being efficient, I think that's going to be true every single year, no matter if the economy is up or the economy is down. Wasting money is never a good idea, right? So I am just, by my nature, I'm an optimizer. I love things. I always see that things could be a little bit better than they are today, or a lot better than they are today, and I always want to optimize that, and that never goes out of style. Being efficient and optimizing and not wasting money, that's going to be important every year, whether the economy is up or down.
It's kind of funny, but there's like when there's free money, well, like
There's never free money.
True experience. A few years ago, I walked into a company and I was like, this is so inefficient. And I'm like, this is expensive. Why are we doing it? And somebody's response was like, oh, money is not a problem. I'm like, it's not a problem until it is. And like, what do you know? A few months later, economy downturn, no more free money. And now, but I think us being forced, again, a lot of VC capital, everybody had money, but now over the past year, we were forced to optimize. It's a lot of learning experience for many younger data team members that this is how you should actually do it. So I think it's a great muscle that we all were forced to build up. And to your point, Paul, we always have to optimize. We always have to focus on it. So now hopefully more people know how to do it.
Yeah. Yeah, I had an interesting experience. One of the larger organizations I worked for, which will stay nameless, it somebody in the organization made the comment, "It's only $1 million," and obviously that provoked some pretty harsh criticism from people at the top of the organization. But I think a lot of times we find ourselves getting sort of lulled into thinking it's only monopoly money. It's not real. Let's just keep doing stuff. But at the end of the day, we really have to think about, are we really spending our dollars smartly? And are we really spending our dollars on the things that are going to move the needle? You know, a lot of times we see these shiny things, we go after them without really thinking about whether or not they're going to generate any real business value. And if we're not thinking about business value, then we're really not in the right roles, because we all have a responsibility to be stewards of the dollars that we're entrusted with and to help move the needle for the organizations that have given us a paycheck. And so at the end of the day, you know, if we're not focused on really how do I make the most of what I have, regardless of the economic conditions, then we need to take a step back and reevaluate what we're doing. So,
I usually say, like, sometimes I say to my team, it's not necessarily for us to spend less, it's to do a lot more with what we're already spending.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, one final question for both of you. What are you most excited about in the data space for 2024?
Oh, well, gosh, what I'm always excited about, which is the, bringing the business value, right? Which is actually making a difference. I am a big Doug Laney fan. His book Infonomics in particular is something I'm a big fan of. And if you do a search for Doug Laney, generally accepted information principles, I think is what he called them on LinkedIn one time. But he's got a set of principles, and those are in his book as well. And I'm a big fan of those as they inform a data culture. And one of those principles that he has is possession. And the possession principle states, and I'm paraphrasing here, but don't build anything that the cost of what you build exceeds the value that it provides. Possessing data costs money, and if the cost exceeds the value, unless you're having to do it for regulatory, or legal reasons, don't do it at all. And having that principle in place means that you have to understand the potential value of what it is that you're building, and then after you build it, you have to actually measure, did I actually achieve that business value? And man, I tell you, I have seen data and analytics efforts return ROI of like 10x, right? Where you put a certain amount of money in, and the business impact that's made is like 100 times the size of the money that you put in. And I even had a manager at one point in my career accuse me of just making it up, right? And saying, hey, you can't possibly get an ROI at that level. That's not, you're lying to me, and so I want to fire you because you lied to me. You can produce some incredible business results through data and analytics, and that's always what I'm most excited about.
Okay, no, great. Veronika?
100% agree. Infonomics, one of my favorite books, and you know how it's a favorite book of mine is I have it in book and on audio.
Same here.
So I absolutely recommend everybody on the call, if you haven't read it, highly recommend. Very, very enlightening. I'm going to take it in slightly business value. Obviously, if we don't deliver business value, we shouldn't be doing this job, period. Like,
that's right.
But I will twist it another way. Actually, as much as LLMs and Gen AI were hype, shiny, whatever, what it kind of brought back to the surface is that if you have bad data, if you have poorly designed bad metadata, your LLMs, therefore, will, pardon my French, bad data in, bad data out. I have slightly, maybe not a G phrase for that, but focusing on data quality, focusing on data management, focusing on data modeling.
Yeah.
If you have that foundation, your LLMs, your AI initiatives will succeed. Otherwise, they won't.
Yeah.
Peter Aiken has a phrase that he says, garbage data plus anything awesome is a garbage result, right? It's And I love that, garbage in, garbage out. If you've got bad data going into those AI models, you're going to get an effective result. And
Very creative garbage out, yeah.
creative garbage out, yes, indeed.
So let me piggyback off that question a little bit. Are there any technologies that you guys are especially excited about this coming year? I know everybody's talking about AI, but is there something specific either about AI or about some other technology that you guys are seeing is like that's something to keep my eye on for this coming year, or that you're already starting to put some effort into?
I'm actually not a specific standout like OpenAI as a company kind of started this whole like innovation wave, but I think every cloud platform is adding these amazing features. Whether you are AWS, Azure, Google, Snowflake, there are these new things coming out that like I would have never thought would even exist. I'm just excited, like going in wide open, like my eyes wide open. I have no idea what we will be able to do, like say 6 months from now. Like truly, no idea. But I'm really excited for it.
No, that's great. Yeah, absolutely. Seeing the same thing. Yeah. Paul?
Yeah, I feel the same way. Change is the only constant, right? There are going to be things that come out in 2024 that I'm going to get really excited about that I have no idea they exist today, which is one of the fun things about being in this space. I will say that I've started to drink the Snowflake Kool-Aid a little bit. I'm really impressed with what they're doing, and I think one of the big reasons is because of the cloud native, the born in the cloud kind of nature of it. There's so much innovation happening in cloud computing, and Snowflake seems to be able to really take advantage of that quickly, because that's where they started.
Well, Paul, as someone who's Snowflake data superhero, here's another jug of Kool-Aid. No, truly, truly amazing, innovative company that is like very, very exciting that things they're working on. Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Well, fantastic. Well, thank you both for participating in our panel today. Ashley, I'll turn it back over to you. Do we have any questions waiting to be answered?
We do. Thank you. Can you guys hear me okay?
Yeah.
Okay, awesome. The first question that came in was, our company is exploring implementing a data vault project. How would you recommend we get started? Veronika or Paul, I don't know if you want to take that one.
I can tell you how I started. I know, so Mike and InfoVia specialize in it, but I started myself, started very small. There are a couple of ways. So I've read a book, I've read blogs, I've actually watched a lot of kind of like demos, YouTube's webinars. I did not I am a certified data vault practitioner now, but I wasn't at the time. Start small. There's a couple of ways to approach use cases, either something that has never been done before, right? Or something that's a massive pain to you right now. But I would, again, you can also bring consultants in, but I think to me, I actually want to try something before I kind of invest in it. So I started myself, small business concept, very, very small. Keep your scope very, very small. I can point you to my Medium kind of list of resources, but I know Data Vault UK puts out a ton of different kind of webinars, user group meetings, connect with various professionals. So this is kind of like informal way to start, but I'll hand it over maybe to Mike, who'll give you like a better, more well-defined path.
Well, yeah, thanks, Veronika. And yeah, there's nothing wrong with going your own and trying to learn through the process. I do have a question for you though. Did you use any automation tools with your data vault, or did you do it all sort of a brute force way?
So I did it all myself, and I will tell you that is a miserable experience. You will, from my personal experience, I spent 50% of my time copy pasting code. So please start it POC manually, totally cool, fine. Just kind of get to a point. I think conceptually, to me, it was like, it's a different way of thinking, especially if you come out of traditional kind of like dimensional model shop or out of a shop that doesn't have anything. So if you get the concept of data vault, which I think is brilliant, by the way, like huge fan. You get it, you understand it, that's when you start investing in it, automation. They're open source tools, they're free, they're paid for, you can bring consultants. I would suggest against building your own. I think it's just silly. I think to me that's like reinventing the wheel.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Yeah, in fact, we're talking with an organization now that built their own tool, and within months they had outgrown the tool, and now they had to either invest in more development of that tool or just go buy something that's already tried and true and has all the functionality you need.
Yeah.
But yeah, absolutely, we hear the same thing across all of our clients. It just doesn't make sense to try to do Data Vault without an automation tool.
No.
There's so many great tools out there in the marketplace: Warescape, Coalesce, VaultSpeed, Data Vault Builder, so on and so forth. And they're all very mature and great tools. They all do a little bit of the pieces of the puzzle, but they're all great tools. The one thing I will say is don't boil the ocean, just to state what you said in a different way. A lot of organizations think I'm going to build an enterprise data vault, and they start with that in mind. But really what you want to do is you want to start with a simple use case, simple business, very finite set of business objects. If you're going to focus on your transportation piece, or you're going to focus on your, warehousing piece, or whatever the case is, really try to isolate it down, pick something that's only going to have maybe a dozen tables source tables for your first piece of your data vault, and then step into it, walk through that soup to nuts, understand how it comes out on the other end. Once you do that, the rest is rinse and repeat. You learn so much just by going end to end, and then from there, you really do find yourself, the concepts become very second nature to you, and it's really easy after that point to evolve it and grow it all the way across your entire enterprise. Paul, what have you seen in terms of building a data vault?
No, everything you said resonates with me. Start small, right? Define your scope to a very specific business value that you want to deliver. I think I've seen people fall into the same trap. I want to build an enterprise data vault and boil the ocean. Don't do that. One of the big reasons that Data Vault is advantageous over like a Kimball approach or an Inman approach is because you can do it in an agile fashion, right? That's kind of the whole point. So take advantage of that. Start small. Don't boil the ocean, and absolutely use an automation tool for sure. And Veronika, you mentioned the certification training. I would highly recommend. There's a lot of misinformation out there about Data Vault that you can get for free, right? But the certification training, which is expensive, but not as expensive as if you don't do it, right? So I would highly recommend the training early on.
Yeah.
So I know we're almost set. I just want to chime in. So you guys probably hear, oh, I need to buy a tool. Don't think about it this way. No matter what you're building, you probably have an ETL tool. So this is the same thing. It's just a slightly different ETL tool. Maybe the tool that you have can also handle Data Vault automation already.
Yeah.
And this is kind of like it's been my problem. I think that turns people away from Data Vault is you have to hire consultants, you have to pay for training, and you have to buy new tools.
Yeah.
You don't have to. You're better off. You will move faster. If you do that, maybe you won't fall into kind of like, I don't know, whatever holes because you have but you don't have to. It doesn't
Right.
let it stop you. I didn't do any of that with my Data Vault. I did get certified eventually, so don't think like you have to. It's just gonna make your life easier if you do that.
It will. Yeah. Start small, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Great. Ashley, any other questions?
One more, and then we're going to conclude here. The last question that came in is actually probably, Mike, best served for you. When do clients typically tap or engage Infovia for their data projects? And when do you recommend they reach out?
Yeah, a lot of our clients, what we find is they come to us when they've hit a tipping point that they're like, we need to do something new. Either they've been hired to modernize their data platform, data environment, or they've gotten to a point where their existing data warehouse just no longer is worth the squeeze to get the juice out of it, and they need to do something different. And so they'll come to us, and a lot of times it's a little bit of a bake-off, and they're saying, okay, we're going to look at you guys and maybe one or two other vendors, and we're going to say, who's going to help us succeed the fastest. And a lot of times what comes down to when we win the engagement is our credibility and the fact that we have a lot of thought leaders and experts that, you get in a conversation with some of the folks that we have on the team, and it becomes apparent right away that they know what they're talking about. It's not their first rodeo, and they can help get you to where you're trying to go quickly. And the other thing is we're going to help you have quick wins. And so what will happen is a lot of these organizations will come to us and say, help me understand what I need to be thinking about and help me understand how I should go about attacking this very large project. You know, my neck's on the line. How am I going to be able to succeed? And that's where we come in and we help build that strategy that I talked about at the beginning. And we say, let's look at really what needs to be part of the holistic solution. Let's not just talk about a warehouse. You know, I often, I've had clients that have come and said, hey, I need a data warehouse. And then we get halfway through the project and we say, okay, now let's start talking about the other things that go with the data warehouse, like your analytics and your governance and your access control and so forth. And what inevitably happens is they'll say, well, I'm out of budget. And I say, well, it's kind of like you asked me to build you a barn and you didn't save any money for the horses to put in the barn. What was the point? And so really, I would say, take a step back, make sure that you have executive support, make sure you have the budget, and we can help you put together that strategy to do that so you can have those conversations and help your executives understand why you need a certain amount of budget to really have the whole picture. Again, you don't have to do it all at once. You don't even have to do it all in one fiscal year. But if you want to get started, there are certain things that you want to make sure that are part of that initial phase one, and then we grow it from there. So.
Awesome, thank you. I want to thank today's presenters, Veronika, Paul, Mike, thank you so much for sharing your insights. We really appreciate it. Today's presentation, we will make available the recording, so stay on the lookout for that. You also should be getting a survey at the conclusion of this event. We'd love to get your feedback, specifically as we start planning for next year of, what themes, what topics do you want to hear from us? In the new year, we're looking to do a lot more events like this where we bring in experts like Veronika and Paul to just share best practices for the industry. At any point, contact us. We'd love to be a resource to you. Thanks again, Paul, Veronika, and Mike, for your time. Happy holidays, everyone, and wishing you a wonderful 2024.
Thank you for having us.
Thank
Thank
you.
you, everyone.
Thank you. Bye.